Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Today we're going to start a new series, and this series will be on how to play Global War 1936 to 1945. And I'm going to, for the most part, follow the rule book. So like I'll start where the rule book starts, and I'll move through it like that. But not necessarily religiously. Like I'm going to jump around from here to there and things like that. Like it's not till chapter 12 where you look at the units. So we're going to look at the units before that. I think it would be important to know what the units do, so that you can put that into context with the other things that we're talking about. But the logical place to start would be with the map, and that's what you're looking at here. So let's just take a walk around and look at this map. This is a beautiful, beautiful map. This is a 4x8 map. They also make a 3x6 map as well, and I had that, and I mailed that off to Jorn, who won the map up in Norway there. So there you see the western part of North America and the South Pacific down here. But yeah, like you look, there's just a little bit of glare here. That's not too bad at all. Like I have a pretty bright light in my room here. It's LED light, and it's really bright. It's about like a fluorescent light for brightness. So that much glare is hardly anything at all. And you only get that at very certain angles. Like you're looking at the map here, you don't get any glare whatsoever. Unlike a map that you might have had laminated or something. My first map that I had made up was laminated, and you could barely see it. You know, like if you had a window that wasn't completely blacked out, like me, I've got a black window covering there, and you can see the sun is shining right now, right? So I keep that window closed so that there isn't so much glare when I'm trying to make a movie. You can see that it's really quite bright in this room. It was dark when I first started making videos. It was very dark in here. It was this is an old bedroom, so it was just one of those bedroom lights that doesn't give off much light, and I had to upgrade that. But anyway, this map, it's well made. It's made out of vinyl, and it's got a lot of different sea zones. So here you look, these are all sea zones here, right? And I'm gonna explain this in detail. Even like most of you will know what a sea zone is and what a land zone is, but I'll just explain that for the people who are maybe being introduced to this game for the first time. And you can see there are numbers on the sea zones. So each sea zone has a number, because when you are placing units on the board to begin the game, it'll tell you place something in sea zone 93. So now you know where to put that ship, right? And then you've got your islands. So an island is completely surrounded by water. This one here, though, Australia, it's not really considered an island. It's a continent, and it's a bunch of territories. But each one of these little things is a territory. And then you have impassable, and they're labeled. It shows you that they're impassable, so you can't walk through them, right? Like you wouldn't be able to go from this space here, or wait a minute, you can go from that one. There's certain places that you just can't go, but you can fly over them. Unlike in Axis and Allies Global 1940, you couldn't fly over impassable spaces, but in this game you can fly over them. And here I'll just show you a couple more here. So the Himalayas here, they're impassable as well, except for here in the Burma Road, but we'll talk about that in a bit. There's an instance where you can get through there. Here's the Sahara Desert. That's the largest impassable zone in here. And my guess is when you're flying over it, you would just use these borders here, right? Like the borders still continue even though there's desert on top of them. So this would be one space to here. It wouldn't be 1, 2. It would just be 1 over to here because there's only one border in the middle, right? If you were flying over it, you couldn't walk through there. And there's just one more space there, and it's a very small one, but it's an important one. It kind of screws you up when you're trying to move around up there. you'll find out when you play this game that that little space there, the Pripet Marshes, it's called. You can't. It's just it's a big bog, and you couldn't have moved through there. You couldn't move tanks and equipment for sure, you know, and even people trying to walk through it would have been very difficult. So you definitely couldn't march an army through it. Anyway, so all these, I showed you sea zones. Well, then you've got your land zones as well, right? And each one of these these are called territories, not land zones. So each territory is labeled. It tells you what the territory is called. See, like there's Saudi Arabia. It's got a flag on it. And some of them have numbers and some of them don't. See, this one here does not have a number. Whereas this one here, Iraq, it does have a number. It's 2. That means that the territory is worth 2. And the 2 is 2 IPP, industrial production points. It's money. You could say bucks if you want, but they're just called IPP in this game. And it's a unit of currency that you use to purchase units and to pay off damage, and you know there's a few things that you would use it for. So what else do we have? Well, we've got different types of zones too, though, right? You see, like you see the circles up there. Those are cities. And they've got fractions of cities too, but it's still a city. Like this one here, it's a semicircle. So this would also be a city. This is Istanbul. It's just if they were to make it a circle here, then it would have screwed up the coastline. And they wanted to try to make things pretty accurate on this map. So, you know, they didn't want to draw a circle there all the way around. But that is, for all intents and purposes, a circle just like those ones up there. And there's different rules. We'll get into that in a couple minutes. So that's a different type of territory. So that's the basic type of things that are on this map. Land zones and sea zones, and numbered and labeled. Also, you see the little, we call these roundels. That's the flag of the country, put it that way. They're not necessarily the flag that the country used, but it's a representation of the country's flag. And somewhat like this one here is darker than these two. That would mean that this is the capital of this country here. And then these would just be territories in that same country. So this would be one country. All 3 territories would be one country. And the same down here. Like here, you've got a darker one and you got 2 light ones. So there's three territories in this country as well. That's Argentina. And you see there's the United States up there. The one thing they made a glaring errors on, and that's Canada on this map. I've seen a map on YouTube, and I'm going to put a description, a link in the description box of this video of what you'll see is the next iteration of this map, but it's not going to be around for a while. Like and that's not going to be made in stone either. That map, it looks almost exactly the same as this one, but there are changes to it. There's a few things added and stuff like that, but it's a ways down the road. So if you're thinking, oh, I better wait, well, it's going to be quite a while. It's going to be quite a wait before that map comes up. But what some of the changes are is that Canada is labeled properly. Here, I can't reach up there. Let me just walk around over there so I can show you. That's the first thing that I noticed. And most people won't notice it, except if you're Canadian, right? We would notice that right away. Like this. This is Quebec, and it's not Labrador. This is actually over here. This is Labrador. And this is Newfoundland right here. They've labeled as St. Pierre Island. St. Pierre Island is actually this tiny little island right here. And most Canadians don't even know what St. Pierre Island is. It's actually a French colony. It's they had a choice whether or not to become a French territory, and they voted on it, and they said no, we'd like to stay as a French colony. So it's just a short ferry ride from Newfoundland to get to St. Pierre Island, and but it's really it's not this big island like it says. That's the island of Newfoundland. And during this game, this space here, Newfoundland, was still not part of Canada. This was still part of the UK. and that's why it's labeled that way. So they did that correctly. And this, one of the provinces of Canada is Newfoundland and Labrador. So this would be Labrador up here. So they would have both been British still, and so that's accurate. They're just labeled wrong. If they had got the labels right, then that would be okay. So let's move up to the top of the map here and show you a little bit. I like the fact that the UK is large. That's one of the problems with Global 40 is it's so small. Like it's just like this territory, and you're trying to fit so much stuff into it, right? And it's only broke up into 2 different places. This one's broke up into 4 British places and Ireland, so that's pretty neat. Okay, so I'll just go around slowly, show you a little bit more from this angle. It's a beautiful map though. I really like it. I like the terrain features on it. That's one of the things that sets this game apart from Global 40. I mean, there's a lot of things, but the one thing that I find is a huge difference is the terrain differences. In Global 40, I mean, you can walk all the way across Siberia, and you know, for somehow you still got enough gas when you get there and food and everything. Just not possible, right? Whereas this one, it would take you all game to walk across there, and there's mountains there and everything. So, you know, there's mountain range over here, and that would be more difficult to get through. So that's a good thing. It shouldn't be so easy to get from one place to another. Okay, so that's that. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about the next thing. Supply path. So one of the main things in this game is called supply path. And what that is, it's a path to or from a major factory in a player's home country that you trace your units for actions such as lend-lease, shipyard production, motorized upgrade, and rail movement. The path may travel over any distance over land or sea. Before I show you how to trace that, let's take a look at home countries, okay? So you see America here. This is the western part of America. So the lower states here, and then over. Let's just move along over here, and then you see America over there. So that's America's home country. If you were to get say like down here in Panama, even though this is American, that's not part of their home country. That's just their home country up there. Okay, so for France, this is their home country right here. Even though there's a lot of blue down here, these are French colonies down here. They're not their home country. For the UK, that is their home country right there, that island right there that you see. For the Germans, this is their home country right here. The Russians, they've got a big home country. Just about everything there, I think actually everything for Russia is on that, is part of their home country. Japan, this is Japan's home country right here. These 3 territories. I think they include Okinawa in that as well, at least for some of the things anyway. China, I think China's home country is pretty much everything, even though it's controlled by 3 different factions. And you look at this one here, this is the Far East Command. It's kind of weird, but even though this is a capital here, Calcutta is the capital of the Far East Command, none of this is a home country. This is considered part of the UK, and this is not a home country. And that's important especially in building facilities. Like you cannot build a major factory down here. You can't build, because you can't build a major factory, you can't build a shipyard. Because you can't build a shipyard, you can't build a capital ship or repair a capital ship down here in Far East Command. And so that's part of the Commonwealth, Great Britain and India, and down here, this is part of the Commonwealth as well. Although, as far as I can tell, This is Anzac's home country right here. These places in here, including New Zealand. So you could build a major factory down here. You could build capital ships and shipyards down here as well. So is that everybody? Oh, there's Italy as well. So Italy, this is their home country here. This peninsula right here, plus Sicily, not Sardinia, just those places right there. So that's the Italian home country. So when you're tracing a supply path, if you were to send land lease to somebody, it has to be from a major factory in your home country, and then you would send it somewhere. And we'll get into that when we talk about land lease. I'm not going to get too far into that. I'm just showing you the map today. So that's what the home countries are. So when you go by land, you would start at a major factory. So here's a major factory here, and you would have to go by railroad. And it doesn't matter what direction you take. Like you look here, there's no railroad going this way from that city, but there's a railroad going this way. So you go this way, and then you can come down this way. You can pretty much go to just about everywhere in Russia, except for up top in Siberia. Like there's the Trans-Siberian Railway right there, and that'll go all the way to Vladivostok over there. But those are the only territories up there that the Russians couldn't go. Now you can go along your own railway, and it has to be undamaged, because you can bomb people's railways just to try to break their supply path. You would just I've got these chips here. This is a damaged railroad, so I would put that there along with the number of chips underneath it, which would show me how much it would cost to repair that damage. Like you would roll the dice to see how much damage you've done to a railway. So this railway would be broken here, right? But so it has to be an undamaged railway. Now you can allow other people to use your railway as well. They don't even have to be your allies. You can just allow somebody to use your railway. I mean, you probably wouldn't allow your enemy to use your railway, but you could, though, is all I'm saying. So it would have to go from a major factory in your home territory to somewhere. And it depends on what you're tracing the supply path for, right? So that's over land, and that goes everywhere, right? There's railways that go all over this board. Like you could go, I'm looking up there, you could go from Berlin up there, and there's a railway that comes all the way down through Turkey there, and it comes all the way down to here. So, actually you could go from Denmark way up there. Actually, no, Denmark's not a home country. So, like say you've got a major factory on Berlin, you could supply path, this would be all the way down here. You could trace your supply path to, but you would have to either own every territory in there or have whoever owns it allow you to use their railway. So that's railing. So that's the supply path by land. Now by water, it has to be from a major factory in your home territory. So here again, we have a major factory. Now it could be here, it could be here, it could be on the other side of the United States, the one on the other side of the board there, as long as it's connected by an undamaged railway to a naval port. So this is a shipyard, and this is a naval base here. It can go through either one of them, right? Like both of these things are used for the same thing when it comes to a supply path. You'll find that a shipyard does everything that a naval base does and more. So it's just a kicked up naval base where you can build and repair capital ships, basically, right? So then what you would do is you would trace a path to another naval base. And so you would go, let's just follow that white line there, because you're supposed to go the shortest route. So you would come down and you would go through there, and you would come up to here, and boom, you could get right into here, into this naval base. So if you were given land lease to these guys, you could come all the way up and do that into there. Although you can blockade somebody's naval base to block their supply path. And what you would do is you would use 3 surface warships of any kind. It couldn't be a submarine. So like here, there's 3 Japanese warships. You would have to be at war though. Like if Japan wasn't at war with the Far East Command, the UK or with America, then this would not be a blockade. But if they were at war, then the Americans couldn't send Lend-Lease through Calcutta because of this blockade here. All right. So that's how supply path works. It goes down railroads, undamaged railroads on land, and it goes from naval base to naval base or shipyard from a from a major factory in your home country to somewhere else. And there's different reasons to use supply paths, and we'll get into each of those over the course of how to play the game. Okay, so let's talk about mountains. First thing you need to know is that mountains is just an optional rule. You can choose to use it or not. Myself, I'm going to use it, even in the first game that I played, even though some people said, you know, you should just play it without the terrain features and everything. If I want to do that, I could just play Axis and Allies, right? I've been doing that for 30 years. I bought this game so that I could use the terrain features, the mountains and the cities and things like that. So anyway, let's just talk about if you're going to use the mountains, what they are. I zoomed in a bit so that you would get a bit of a close-up here. So you can see, like, these are mountains, right? It kind of looks rough and everything. That's what a mountain looks like. And then over here, this is not mountain, right? When it's just a solid color. There's two different types of mountain things on here. Like, there's the mountain border. So like this territory here is why I zoomed in on this one. You see, not all of this territory is covered by mountains, right? Like, you look at Switzerland here. Switzerland and Austria and Switzerland, both of them completely covered by mountains, right? So we would call those mountain territories. But this one here, where it's not mountains in the whole thing, just along the border here, and a little bit in, but I mean along the border, that's called a mountain border, not a mountain territory. And that's important because what happens with a mountain border, so if you're attacking into a mountain border, let's say this guy's attacking into here, then he has -1 in his attack ability. So like this is a dude, so his attack is 2 or less. So now he has to hit a 1 in order to kill somebody in here. But here, let's just put a guy in there, make it a little easier to see. So if he's coming in there, then he's -1. And that holds true for all land units, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's tanks or if it's dudes or if it's motorized or mechanized infantry or artillery. They're all -1. The only thing that is not -1 is this guy here, mountain infantry. And this is why we have different types of infantry in this game. This guy is specifically for these mountain situations, whether it's a mountain border or mountain territory. So when this guy comes in, he does not suffer -1. Like, they're both attack at 2 and defend at 4 normally, right? If there's no mountains around. But this guy is going to be -1 attack, and this guy is not going to be -1. So he'll be rolling at 1, and he'll be rolling at 2 still. So that's attacking in, and that holds true for the first round of combat. But also, remember, that's just ground troops. Like, if you're coming in with planes, planes don't suffer that. Planes don't have to climb the mountains, right? So they don't care. So these things, whatever they attack at normally, that's what they're going to attack at, depending on what type of plane you have. So that's a mountain border. First round of combat, these guys are -1. These guys are straight up normal, right? Now, defending, if this guy was defending the territory, and it's a mountain border, so this guy comes in, he's -1 now. This guy is +1 because he's defending. He's a mountain infantry defending a mountain border. So for the first round of combat, this guy is -1, and this guy is +1 because he's a mountain infantry. And so that's just on the first round of combat, because what that means is, like, they had to fight for the first round. This guy got over the mountain. Now they're straight up. Now he's not in the mountain anymore. Like they fought over the border. Now they're fighting inland here. Now don't worry about this river here. We'll talk about rivers afterwards. But that's also something. But we're just talking about mountains for now, okay? Now, that's it. That's if the guy was attacking from this territory. But if the guy was attacking from this territory over here, like you can see, even though this is a mountain border territory, there's only mountains just on the slight side of here. So what you would do is you look at that. Let me just find something here. Let's use this German destroyer here. So what you do is you take a look at the roundel there. If you can get to the roundel without going through any mountains, then that means that you don't suffer that penalty. So this guy attacking into here, let's just put this mountain guy up. So this guy attacking into here, he does not go -1, and this guy does not go +1 because he's not attacking over a mountain border. The mountain border is if he was coming in through this direction. So that's very important to notice that. And some of them aren't quite as clear as this, but like I said, what you will do is you will see, can I get to that roundel from there, right? And if you can get to the roundel, because that's the gauge on the board, and all of them, everybody's got a roundel on the territory, right? So you would try to get to the roundel there. So like here, mountain border, coming in here, that's not a mountain border because you can get to the roundel there without going through a mountain, right? But over here, just slight mountain, like there's a little bit here where there isn't a mountain, but you know, like you can't get there, right? Like you wouldn't draw it from the edge there. You would draw it from roundel to roundel. This one's a little different because you look at over here and that's, you know, but you're going from the roundel to the roundel when you're looking at, okay, that's mountain. All right. Whereas this one, that's not mountain. This one's mountain. Okay, so then that's mountain border. So that's -1 and +1 for mountain infantry defending on the first round of combat. Now, if you're attacking into a mountain, let's say this guy is in the mountain here, and you're attacking in a mountain territory. So it's not like this where it's just on the border. It's a complete territory. Then this guy attacking in there, well, let's do a normal guy first. A normal guy attacking in there. Now he would suffer that -1 for all rounds of combat. Like if it went 10 rounds, he would be rolling at 1 instead of 2 the entire time, and that's true for all ground units. And again, for planes, no penalty at all, right? Now this guy here, the mountain infantry, because he's part billy goat, he attacks into a mountain territory. He does not suffer any penalty again. Now, if he was defending, this guy is coming in and attacking, then he would get his +1 bonus for all rounds of combat, no matter how many rounds it goes, because it's a mountain territory, not just a mountain border. So that's why they have mountain infantry in this game, and that's why you need to buy mountain infantry for some of them. Like you'll look at your territories and you'll see like there's just no mountains where I am, so maybe I don't need too many mountain infantry. Like you look at the British over here, I was using a mountain infantry there, but you look at here and they're not defending any mountains here. Like if you had a gap in Scotland, yeah, maybe put a mountain infantry up here, but they're not going to do you much good down there unless you are planning on bringing them down, transporting them to a place that has mountains in it. You know, that's when you want to buy your mountain infantry. Like I might buy some mountain infantry and put them in Cairo down here if I was planning on transporting them up to someplace in Europe that had mountains, okay? So that's mountains. We'll get to rivers in a second. Now, rivers are also an optional rule that you can use or choose not to use. Again, I'm going to be choosing to use them because I want the terrain features on my map. I want to be able to utilize them. So they're the little things here in blue. Like you can see this river here going along. And you notice that generally it follows along a border. And I don't think the designers of the game were being disingenuous about that. Like that's typically where you would find the border of many nations, right? Here's another one here. Is okay, this side of the river is ours and that side is yours. You know, right back to tribal days, right? That was a natural boundary between peoples, right? people on one side of the river would grow in one direction, and people on the other side, they develop their own language and grow differently. And of course, they'd have their little skirmishes and places in the river where they could get across. But anyway, over time, it just gradually got to the point where rivers were typically something that separated nations in the end, and so that's why you'll find a lot of the borders on here will be on borderlines, and some of them were probably fudged a little bit, or maybe territories were just drawn that way. Not necessarily the rivers were changed, but the territories were changed. So how do we do that? Okay, first of all, we need to understand about what side of the line that what side of the border it is. So if you're attacking into this place here, let's forget for a minute that it's a city, okay? Well, actually, let's just go down to Bessarabia here. Let's take a look at this border right here. So let's say we're attacking into this space right here. Now, it's the territory that you're attacking into that you would suffer the penalty on. So because we're attacking this space right here, let's just put a German roundel on there so it'll make it easier to see. These guys are going to attack into here, okay? Now, the river is on our side of the border here for the Russian player, so we don't suffer a penalty there. It's like we get across the river, and then there's still some space, and then we attack, and we didn't have any problem. But if it's the other way around, if this is the territory here, and we're attacking into this territory, and the river is on that side of the border, it's on the side that we're attacking into, so it's in the defending territory. Well, that's when we suffer a penalty. And the penalty is because there's difficulty in getting across the water. And while we're doing that, the other guys are lining up. They knew where we're going to cross, and this is probably where we're going to cross. So they were ready with their guns, and they're going to be shooting you as you're trying to cross that river. Okay, so what happens is the land units. Okay, so when you're attacking across the river, just like the mountains, you are -1 in your attack. So this guy normally attacks at a 6, so now he's going to attack at a 5. And this guy, I think he attacks at a 2, so he's going to attack at a 1 now. And that's just for the first round of combat. It's kind of like a mountain border territory, okay? Because it's only on the border. Once you cross the river, you're fine. You're in there and you're getting it on with these guys, right? But it's crossing that river that you were -1. Now, there is no defender that like mountain infantry. There's nobody that's a +1. And there's nobody that gets skirts around not having to pay that penalty when you're going across a river and you're an attacker. There's no magic bullet for that. There's no river people, right? But one of the things that you do have as a defender bonus, so like planes don't suffer that penalty, right? So if you're like these guys are subject to that penalty, and this guy is not subject to that penalty, well then. When you get a hit on the attacker, when the defender gets a hit, then you have to choose somebody that was subject to the river rules. You can't choose this guy. You have to choose one of these because they were the ones that were suffering the penalty. These guys are vulnerable before this guy is, okay? And look at that. You'll read through the rules, and we'll go through the units later on. This is just the very first step in our going through the rules. We're doing the map, but later on we'll discuss who has penalties and who doesn't have penalties. But just for river rules, know that the defender's bonus in this case, other than the attacker being -1, is that the casualty comes from somebody that has to suffer the bonus when coming across the river. And so that's rivers. We'll move on to straits and canals. Oh, wait a minute. Before I move on, I showed you here when you're moving in. Okay, the river is on this side. It's in the defending where you have to worry about the thing. Like over here, you wouldn't suffer the bonus. But over here, you look at this one here where it's kind of double-sided like that. That means it doesn't matter which direction you're going to suffer that penalty when going across that river. The river is literally on the border, whereas in this case over here, the river is slightly on this side of the border, on this side of the border or on this side of the border on this in this territory. But this river is right on the border. So regardless of what direction you're going in, you have to cross that river. Okay, we'll go to Straits and Canals. Okay, so Straits and Canals. Now they're kind of similar, but they're not exactly similar. Both of them are similar in the fact that they're water passages. You can close them to nations that you're at war with. If you own the territory that owns that strait or canal, and they're defined in the rules who's the owner of that strait. Canals are obvious because the canals go through a territory, right? So a strait is a narrow passage through a sea zone. Each strait is controlled by possession of a specific adjacent land zone. So like here, the Danish Strait here, that going through here is controlled by Denmark. So whoever controls Denmark controls passage through the strait. And we'll get to this in a couple minutes. There are a couple of extra rules. And a lot of these have, or some of these, sorry, there's not a lot of them to begin with, but these, some of them have specific rules as well. So that's a strait right there, okay? And a canal, it's a water passage across land. So basically, it's the land is owned by, both sides of the land are owned by the same one. And so this is a strait, not a canal, because this is Norway and this is Denmark. However, like we have some right here, like right next to that, here's the Kiel Canal, and they're labeled as well, like there's the Danish Strait and there's the Kiel Canal. So whoever owns Western Germany, it's probably Germany, will control this canal as well, right? So they can pass, Germany can pass ships through here, or they can allow Italy to pass ships through if they want, right? They're probably not going to allow the Russians to go through there. So if Germany was to own Denmark here, Germany could go through here, no problem. And it only takes one space to get through there. You know, there's not some special movement that you have to do to get there. But if the Russians want to go through, and these two nations are at war, like if they're not at war, then the Russians can go through this strait, and so can the Germans. But if Germany owns this strait, and Russia can't come through here, because this strait is close to the Russians. Or like the Russians can ask, can we come in and attack you? The German player has to say, screw you. And there's nothing they can do about that, right? So there's a couple of other things that you need to know about that, like land units. So let me just grab a dude here. So now a dude here, like this territory is the same as this territory. Like he can walk across here, no problem, right? But he can't walk across here. Not because he doesn't own this. Even if the Germans own this territory, he can't cross that because this is a strait. You can cross a canal with your dude, but you can't cross the strait with a dude or a land unit, any type of land unit, right? Now, air units, they can fly over a strait like this guy here. If he's in here, he could fly into there. There's a movement of one. But he can't fly through here if the country is neutral. Like that's a bad example because that country's never going to be neutral. But here, this is another example of a canal right here. This is the Bosphorus and Dardanelles. One is the Bosphorus and one is the Dardanelles. So you could not fly a plane through here because this is neutral to begin the game. If say Germany takes it over, well then you can fly the British plane through there. Nothing stops you from flying over an enemy territory, but you can't fly over a neutral territory. And that's the same rule as that is in Axis and Allies Global 1940. You're not allowed to fly over a neutral territory, even if it's pro-Axis or pro-Allies. It doesn't matter. You can't fly over a neutral territory. Well, same thing. You can't fly over a neutral strait. If somebody owns that strait, then you can do it, and that's because you're going over like this is all one country or one territory right here. That's why you can't fly through there. But on the other hand, like if you're looking at, here's a strait here, right? Well, you can fly through the strait no matter who owns it. The person who owns Gibraltar controls this strait, controls who can go through it and who can't. as far as people are at war. Like if Britain controls it like they do at the start of the game, and they're not at war with Italy, then Italy can move through it no problem, right? But once they're at war, then Britain closes the strait. Now Italy can't move through there. They have to stay in here. Or if they're out here, then they have to stay out here until they take over Gibraltar, right? But the Italian planes can fly through here. They can fly through a strait, but not through a canal. What else? I think that's pretty much it for straits and canals. But like, let's go over the specifics. Like, first I'll identify them for you. So the Panama Canal, that's this one down here, and we all know where the Panama Canal is. So the Americans control this one, right? But they don't get to tell anybody who can go through and who can't go through until their income is at 15 IPP. Like, they start with much less than that, right? And their income bumps up depending on what happens. Like, Japan builds a capital ship, or somebody attacks this guy, or something happens, right? Well, that's when the American income goes up incrementally, right? And once the American income reaches 15 IPP, then they can determine who's allowed to go through the Panama Canal and who can't. And obviously you can't fly through there before then, because that's a neutral canal. So remember, you can't fly through a neutral canal, right? Just like you can't fly over America at all because they're a neutral country to begin the game. Once they're at war, different story, right? Okay, so that's the Panama. Then we have the Suez Canal over here. That's the one that goes through right here. That's the one that goes through Cairo, and that's a really big deal. And that's also, there's some bonuses involved in that as well, as far as British income. So the British own the Suez Canal there, and it can close that canal to any nations that they're at war with. So again, the Italians could go through there all they want until Britain is at war with them, and there's certain conditions that Britain can declare war on them. Again, that's not what this video is about. We'll get to that later. But it's up to Britain to determine who goes through and who doesn't go through once they're at war with that nation. Like, they could allow the Italians to go through there if they want, right? But it's not likely. So the Kiel Canal, and I showed you that one earlier up here. That's the Kiel Canal right there. Germany owns that one, and Germany can allow whoever they want to go through there. Like, they could let the British go through there even when they're at war if they want. It's up to them, but it's not likely that they will, right? It's up to Germany to decide who uses the Kiel Canal. Okay, the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, that's the one I showed you in Turkey there. And it says, so Turkey, while at neutral, closes to any nation at war with a major power. So you can move through there, like the Russians here. If the Russians are not at war with anybody yet, and like if you're starting in 1936, that is the case then, right? So the Russians could actually go through there all they want until they're at war with the Germans or the Japanese or the Italians. They could go through there all they want before that. Or I guess the Allies, because this is a three-way game, so as long as they're not at war with a major power, they can go through there, and that holds true for any nation. Once they're at war, though, that canal gets closed to them. The Baltic White Sea Canal. Okay, that one's pretty interesting. Let's move this back here. So you see here, it starts over here in Leningrad, and it goes through here, and comes through here, and all the way up through here. So it's quite the little passage there, right? So the Russians control that one, and they can allow anybody to go through. But this is it's not a very large one. It's not a very large body of water in places. So the only thing that can go through there is submarines. You can't take any other kind. You can't take a destroyer through. You can't take a transport through. Nothing like that. Only submarines can go through this, and it's up to the Russians to determine who goes through there. And I suppose that if you were to take over these territories here, like this territory, then like if the Germans were to own these two territories, then they would be the ones deciding who can go through there or not. I can't see the Russians be able to make that determination after they lose it, right? So, straits. Okay, I showed you the Danish Strait there. Let me just grab another piece of paper. I'm going off the rules here. We're on page 8 if you're following along. Okay, so the Danish Strait here, let's move up here. So there's a couple of passages here, right? Connecting sea zone 13 and sea zone 15. These two sea zones here, right? Britain, France, and the US may not pass any ships or submarines through the strait until they are at war. Comintern and Axis units may move through the straits. So only the Axis and the Comintern, so mostly Germany and Russia, but I guess Italy might come through there. Highly unlikely that the Japanese will come through there. But only those guys are allowed to go through until they're at war. And then the Allies can move through there. However, remember that they're going to have to I think that they'd have to take Denmark out, wouldn't they? Oh, maybe not. You know what it is probably? I think Germany's got to take Denmark, and then they can prevent these guys from coming in. So once they're at war, once the British are at war, then they can come through here. But Germany can stop that just by going and taking over Denmark. And that wouldn't be difficult. But that does trigger a series of other things that can happen, right? When Germany takes Denmark. Again, something for another video. Okay, and then there's the Straits of Gibraltar, which I showed you earlier. So they can close the Straits of Gibraltar, like I said, to any nation they're at war with. And this is the Straits of Gibraltar, and whoever owns Gibraltar controls the Straits of Gibraltar. Okay, so I think that's just about it. I'm just looking over the rules here. I don't think there's anything more to tell you about that. Yeah, that's the long and the short of Straits and Canals. So just remember, when a canal is neutral, you can't fly through there with your planes. That's one of the stickier things. Like the other things are mostly obvious, right? But that's just one of the sticky things that you need to remember. You can't fly over that, but you can fly over that, because that's a strait, not a canal. Anyway, let's move on next to cities. Be right back. Okay, so now we're going to get into cities. Cities are the circles that you see on the board. And in places where they're along a coast, it may just be a semicircle. Like you look down here in Turkey, it's just a semicircle. They didn't want to, make Istanbul look weird by the shoreline by just making it a circle, right? And like here, Rome has got the circle where the land is, and then just coastline. So that's a city as well. What they are is just strategically important locations on the board. And there's a few different things that you would use them for. One of them could be a victory objective, one of the alternate victory objectives that you can use, and we'll get into those later. And also they're fortification areas. So with cities, they afford defending infantry class units +1 on all rounds of combat. So we're talking about, like, let's take a look at this city here. So this is an infantry class unit. These are not. These are armor class units, right? So this guy here will get +1 in his defending. But these other units here are armor class. So not only do infantry class units get a +1, but armor class units get a target selection of 1. So these guys would roll at their normal, like this is a 6 or less, and I believe this is 3 or 4 or less. Anyway, whatever it is, we'll find out later in another video. I don't have them all completely memorized yet. I'm getting better at it, but anyway, what happens is you'll roll the dice, and if you happen to roll a 1 for that tank, then it's the defender that gets to choose what the casualty is. Normally, the attacker would just choose the lowest unit that he has, probably an infantry if he's got an infantry, right? But if you roll a 1, then this guy gets to choose his own casualty, right? It's a targeted hit. The other thing is, if the city is surrounded, then that's going to make everybody in it -1. All the units, even planes and everything. So, like, you look at the city here, and there's 4 territories that are around it, right? Or 1, 2, Actually, there's only 3 of them around this one. But here there's 4 around this one. So let's just take a look at that. Now you can surround a city by taking the territories all around it, right? Let's just put these on here like this. And so Germany owns all 4 of these territories here. And so this city is completely surrounded. So now these guys here, everybody inside here, including the planes, they will all roll at a -1 instead of having their +1 for the infantry class. And the reason for that is, you know, like there's no food getting through, there's no fuel, there's no bullets, you know, like they can't be resupplied, and so they're at a disadvantage to that. So like if there was lots of units in here, like say you're attacking Moscow or something, it's got 50 units in there, it might be advantageous for you, especially if there's lots of units, to surround the city first and then attack it, because then all of those units are going to be rolling at 1 or less. You know, it's one thing if there's just 1 or 2 units there, and even then it's good to do it. But when you got lots of units there, then that's a good time to surround a city and then attack it, right? So that's cities. I talked to you about impassable zones before, so let's just move down and we'll talk about the Burma Road for a minute. Now, you might remember the Burma Road from Global 40, right? Well, there's the same thing is on here. So it starts here in Yunnan, and it goes just right through to Burma right here. Like it doesn't go through 4 territories, it just goes through 2. So the difference with this Burma Road is it opens on or after July 1938 if Japan and China are at war and Yunnan is in possession of the KMT. So these guys right here, the nationalist Chinese. Now, if Japan owns the Burma Road, owns Yunnan, then the Burma Road is not open. Then you would have to go around, because you see, this is one of those impassable zones. This is the Himalayas, right? So you can't walk through there unless the KMT owns the Yunnan, and then the Burma Road is open, and then you can go through there. Otherwise, like if you were the Japanese, then you would have to go around. Or if you were the British, you would have to go around the other way, right? So you would have to come around the mountains. But if these guys are in possession of that, then well, these guys could go through, or the British could go through. So it's the only way that land units may attack or move between Burma and Yunnan across an otherwise impassable Himalayan mountains, like I said. Also, you can use the Burma Road to trace a supply path, just like it was a railroad. So I showed you supply path earlier. The Burma Road, like you can see, there's a railway going up to it, so the Burma Road can be used as a supply path as well. But again, you'd have to, your side would have to own this territory and this territory, or somebody who's willing to give you a pass, right? Like you might want to give the Russians a pass, but you're certainly not going to give the Japanese a pass if you're on the ally side of it, right? And then when you do that, then the Lend-Lease, like if you're Lend-Leasing to China, this is where the Lend-Lease would come in, is right here in Yunnan. So like if you were sending a unit and it was going through the port here, like let's say that you were sending an infantry to China from the United States, then it would come through this port here, and it would come down here up the Burma Road, and that's where it would come out as. But you know, it could be a plane, it could be whatever, right? And that's it for Burma Road. It's pretty simple. I do believe that the nationalist Chinese get a bonus of 1 if the Burma Road is open. So if the Allies own both sides of this, then the Burma Road is open, and the KMT will get +1. Antarctica. So down here is Antarctica, and you can see it all along the bottom of the board there, right? Now, normally this is not used at all, except if you want to put your cell phone down, or you're taking your casualties off, you can throw them there. Otherwise, this is a no-go zone, all down the bottom of the board. There is an expansion set, and we're going to get into that. After I finish the rules off, then I'm going to do a series on expansion sets, and then I will get into that. Okay, there's an expansion set where the Germans will be using Antarctica. Other than that, Antarctica is not in use. Okay, then there's the Northern Sea Route. Let's just go up here. Now you can't see it. It's not shown on the board. It's implied, right? So what happens is here's C Zone 5 right here. Here's C Zone 6 right here. So Russia or anybody that Russia allows can take one ship from either C Zone 5 or C Zone 6. Could be the Americans, could be the British, or it could be the Russians or the French. Or Germans if they wanted Germany too, but I can't imagine they would. But they can take a ship and move along, let's say, the border here, and then they have to come out here in C Zone number 7. Now, the rules are pretty specific that it has to go that way. Now, I don't know why you can't go from C Zone 7 all the way to the other side down there, but the rules are specifically say you can go from either 5 or 6 into C Zone 7, and that takes up all of your move. Like if you started in 6, you can't go here, that's 1, and then that's 2. No, you can't do that. This is your entire movement coming to here, and it's a non-combat move into C Zone 7. So that's pretty interesting that you can do that. And there is a passage through there, and it's getting more and more open every day. But back then it would have still been pretty frozen. Anyway, so I'm going to take a bit of a break here. I got to run off to work, and then I'll finish this video off tomorrow morning and then publish it. We still got dual terrains to go, and then I think that's it for this video. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about is dual terrains. And that's when you have two things like a mountain and a river, or a river and a city, or a mountain city, a city located in a mountain. So here you have Madrid. And it's a city with the circle, and it's got mountain in it. You can see the mountainous terrain in there. So what happens when you have a mountain city is the defender will go around the table and grab the attacker by the earlobe and haul him out into the backyard, and the attacker has to stand there without moving, and the defender gets to jump up and drop kick him in the face. And what happens after that? Just a second. Let me just look at Uh-oh. Sorry, that's wrong. So I was talking about a different game. Awkward. Okay, so Mountain City here the rules are different for this game. So when they have more than one terrain in them, the players, they have to claim their highest attack and defense bonus, and like whatever modifier is better, right? And it can change throughout the combat because some things are just on the first round of combat, right? Like a mountain border is only on the first round of combat, or a river is only on the first round of combat. So in a mountain city, it's a +1 defense on all rounds of combat and a -1 to the attacker. It can be surrounded like a city, like I showed you earlier on cities, how to surround them. And the mountain infantry don't gain the +1. Like when you're attacking into a mountain city, you don't get that +1, because remember, you're -1 when you're attacking into a city as a land unit, right? So they're not going to get the +1. They're just going to be even. But yeah, this dude here, he would have to be -1, right? Because he's attacking into a city. And also one last thing, just like in mountains, you couldn't blitz through a city. Like if this city was empty, or if you, we'll get into blitzing later, but if you were to take it in the first 3 rounds and then move on, you couldn't move on. Or you can't blitz out of a city. Like if we move back here, you couldn't take these guys out and then blitz into this territory. You can't do that in a mountain city, okay? So that's a mountain city. So let's find a mountain river here. Okay, so here, right here, here's a mountain and a river. This river, remember, is on both sides of the border. So you claim your highest combat advantage and or disadvantage. So the attacking across the river into a mountain is still -1 on the first round of combat. Mountain infantry mountain infantry would be subject to the -1 for the river, even though they suffer no penalty attacking into the mountains. So you're still going to be -1 going across the river if you were attacking into the mountain, doing that. But again, like if you were defending, then he's the +1 because he doesn't have to cross the river. It's only the attacker that has to cross that river, right? So he would be a -1 to do that. Normally, like if he was attacking, normally like from here to here, then that would be a 0, right? Or if he was attacking into just a mountain territory, that would be a 0. But because he is crossing a river into a mountain territory, that's why it's -1. So then we have the rivers and cities here. There's this one right here. So if you're attacking into this city from here, you have to go into a city, plus you have to go across a river. So the river would provide a -1 to the attacker on the first round of combat, just like we did before, right? So this guy's -1 coming in here. And it would provide a +1 to the defender, defending infantry class units. Or actually, yeah, I think it's all units, sorry. And +1 to these guys for all rounds of combat because they're defending in a city, right? So -1 to this guy for crossing the river, +1 to this guy for being in a city. That's only for the first round. This is for all rounds. And that's it, I think. One thing I wanted to show you is that this card here, the quick reference card, here, let me just zoom back out again. The quick reference card that you can download from Historical Board Gaming, this has the terrain modifiers on it right there. So I was using that while I was learning the game. I just whip it out real quickly and what was that about a mountain territory again? And it's right there, and it's only 2 pages long, which is great. Like you don't have to skip through 20 pages to look. I'll show you this now because this will come in handy for lots of different things. Naval combat, amphibious, land combat, submarines, convoy raiding, strategic bombing. Like all of the things on here are things that you might spend a while looking through the book for, and it's just a quick blurb on each, right? So if you hadn't read the rule book, then it might be difficult to determine from there what it is. But as I'm looking at the rules, so that is just infantry class units that are +1 on all rounds of combat. I thought so. I got the rules sitting here and I whipped it over to cities, and sure enough, it's just infantry class units. I thought that was correct. So it's not all units, it's just infantry class. That would be +1 on all rounds of combat. Anyway, so that is the map. And all the features of the map, all the different terrains. When you're learning how to play the game, you can do it without the terrains if you want. But if you're like me and you played a game like this for years, you played Axis and Allies for years, the mechanics, there's an adjustment there and a little bit of adjustment with the rolling, but you'll be able to handle the different terrains. If you're teaching somebody who really has not played Axis and Allies much, then you might want to play the game without all the different terrain features until they just like at least one game until they learn how to play the game, and then you can start adding in the terrain features. Anyway, that's it, and we're going to move on to something else next, but that's the end of this video. So thank you for joining me here. This is General Hand Grenade. Take care, everyone.